Good evening. I was living in the remote woods of Western Maine when I made this drawing, rather traditional. But I'd also gone back to school. I was halfway through a paramedic career. And so what I'd like to share with you tonight is how the work changes over the next, it was 10 years or so, a bachelor's program in architecture, and then a graduate degree in studio art. And so here you start to see how the lines are looser, my hand's loosening up. It's a little bit more of a live drawing than perhaps the previous one. And about the same time I began to paint. So here it becomes about color relationships and certainly space. Cooler tints towards us, and then on the other side of the table, the shades, and then the tints in the forward part. So anyway, here I finally began to wake up to shape, line weight, space, color relationships, of course. I think there might be at least a little bit of ambiguity here. There's certainly some pattern. And here, all of a sudden, these are some of the last paintings I made where it's a little bit more about mark making, paint application, certainly space. Space is important to all my work, and we'll see that as we go on. I do lean towards minimalism, but as was pointed out in the introduction, I'm always looking for the evidence of the human hand to remain. And here the paint application is important. And there's certainly some mystery here, and it allows you to project your own life into it, I think. And so in grad school, I started to work more three-dimensionally, which was pretty exciting, and I still primarily work that way. And certainly this is still about color relationships, space, the formal values, texture, pattern, shape, form. And here, very much borrowed from my architecture education, edges define space. The electrical panel, which had been certainly vertical in a wall in some home in Philadelphia that I found on the side of the street, is now horizontal, filled with concrete, and it references hearth, where historically humans have come together. And here, the open space defined by those different line weights is in conversation with that closed mass of concrete at the other end of the cardboard on the floor. And of course, the light and shadow allows us to transcend those spaces. Again, in Philadelphia, there's so much to be found on the street and on the sidewalk. These materials were all found there, and here the light coming through the window behind is refracting the red on the other side of the insulation onto that little bit of concrete that I found on the street, as well as the base it's on. And then cardboard. Cardboard is still very important to my work. Here it's about planar changes and how that refracts the light differently. There's that rivet that sort of becomes a moment. Again, color relationships, planar changes. The cardboard up on top I built or laminated together about 2.5 inches worth on a jig I built, and now you're starting to see hardware attaching one piece to another. Shade and shadow is still there if you're looking for it. And again, now I'm combining welded materials with some shop towels. I started spray painting. So again, I'm hoping that you bring your own associations to the work, deciding for yourself what it's about. Excuse me. So this is post-grad school. This is welded steel with the cardboard up on top. Might be a little bit unexpected, I hope, and that yellow ochre of the cardboard works with the yellow of the steel. And the shadow now becomes important because it's beginning to tell you that the work is no longer parallel to the wall. And this is quite recent. Again, found materials. This is very much about color relationships, of course. but also the other formal values of pattern, space, texture, line, about 5 feet tall. Just like the previous piece, I would argue it's a painting. So it's about color relationships. It's about repeating the same shape. I found this Baltic plywood left over from some work a student had done where I work, and then I found this little knot from the corner of a board in my driveway, some 25 miles away, and I immediately had the thought that they might work together, and so now you really have circle and the square, and you have this juxtaposition between these very industrialized materials, the Baltic plywood, and then the organic knot. And this is quite recent. This is variations on line weight and the quality of the line, and solid void relationship perhaps between the oriented strand board. And here, that found wood with the color on it, I then carefully attached with biscuits, and then inserted it into the OSB with biscuits, and it detonates, it celebrates the oriented strand board, it brings it alive so that you appreciate it, and now the two are speaking with each other. And this is the last piece. Those two pieces of color are a figure on the ground for sure, but you might have any number of associations with them, such as piano keys or the Twin Towers or a gas pedal and a brake pedal. It's entirely up to you, but yet again, they're working with the oriented strand board. And so again, thank you very much for coming out tonight.